will draw down 700 people effective today.
It's thanks to efforts by local law enforcement, Homan says, who agreed to cooperate and turn over arrested immigrants.
America, Minnesota just became the first state to force a federal retreat in the Trump deportation surge because they lost so badly that even liberals are turning on Timmy Tampon Walz.
On Wednesday, he announced that 700 agents would be leaving Minnesota effective immediately, and that is thanks, he says, to an unprecedented number of counties now communicating with immigration officials.
Local law enforcement that Walz told to stand down, they're now turning over arrested illegals to federal agents.
Rapunzel, throw down your support for your voting base. Come on. You have a lot of lights on.
Let me show you how Minnesota became the blueprint for what happens when woke governors lose control. What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Minnesota just proved that sanctuary city policies collapse the moment federal pressure meets local reality. Let me explain what's really happening with this 700 agent withdrawal, because the media is directly trying to spin this as the Trump administration backing down. Homan is pulling out agents because Minnesota counties surrendered.
2,000 officers will stay in the state, but they're working on a path for a total withdrawal.
Notice, obviously, what they're not telling you. 2,000 agents are still in Minnesota. That's still 25 times more than the normal 80 agents who cover immigration in the Twin Cities. I think personally there was a lot of pressure on the administration, specifically after the two shootings. The mission here was getting local law enforcement to honor immigration detainers and cooperate with federal agents. For years, Timmy Tampon Walz told Minnesota counties to ignore ICE. He created sanctuary policies that protected criminal illegals. He positioned himself as a resistance to Trump's deportation agenda. And this is where we see these protests. This is where we see the resistance, not only from the Timmy Tampon Walz administration, but from the people on the ground. The libs.
According to the White House, more than 4,000 people have now been apprehended since Operation Metro Surge began. The announcement calls them, quote, dangerous criminal aliens. But Homan says of the 4,000 arrested, around 270 are actually considered worst of the worst, with convictions for things like homicide, sex crimes, and assault.
But here's what broke Timmy Tampon Walz's resistance. 2 U.S. citizens got killed during ICE operations. Alex Preddy and Renee Good both shot during confrontations with federal agents. And instead of that creating more resistance, it created fear. Counties realized that Walz's sanctuary policies were bringing heat that they actually couldn't handle. Local sheriffs started quietly operating because they didn't want their jurisdiction to become the next war zone.
As back in Minneapolis, Homan says the ultimate goal is a complete drawdown of federal presence, but the agency is not there yet.
This is not about ICE doing normal ICE stuff. The objection is to ICE pulling people off the street indiscriminately.
2,000 agents stay until new behavior becomes actually permanent. This is how you break down sanctuary city policies. You don't allow too much negotiation. You don't compromise. You flood the zone with federal agents, arrest thousands of illegals, including hundreds of violent criminals, and force local government to choose between continued chaos or cooperation without invoking the Insurrection Act. Minnesota chose cooperation. Walz lost. Now, let me show you the legal humiliation that preceded this particular surrender, because Timmy Tampon Walz tried to stop Operation Metro Surge through the courts. He filed a lawsuit claiming the federal government was violating Minnesota's sovereignty under the 10th Amendment, and a federal judge just destroyed that argument.
This comes as the judge denied the state's request to immediately halt Operation Metro Surge. And our So Young Kim joining us now with a look at this case. And So Young, the judge says the state has not met the legal burden on 10th Amendment grounds.
Catherine Menendez denied the preliminary injunction. She said Minnesota failed to meet legal burden to prove the federal government was violating state sovereignty. But here's the part that should embarrass Timmy Tampon Walz. The judge acknowledged that both sides have evidence supporting their arguments, but Minnesota's case was so weak, she couldn't justify stopping federal operation.
Because there is evidence supporting both sides' arguments as to motivation and the relative merits of each side's competing positions are unclear, the court is reluctant to find that the likelihood of success factor weighs sufficiently in favor of granting a preliminary injunction.
Translation: Walz's lawsuit was so bad that even a judge who acknowledged profound and heartbreaking consequences from the ICE surge still couldn't justify stopping it. That is a legal massacre.
Plaintiffs have made a strong showing that Operation Metro Surge has had and will likely continue to have profound and even heartbreaking consequences on the state of Minnesota, the Twin Cities, and Minnesotans.
But watch how the judge frames this. She said the surge has profound and heartbreaking consequences for Minnesota, not for American citizens, not for crime victims, for the state of Minnesota, meaning the government and the illegal immigration population that Walz is protecting. The judge never mentions American citizens who were victims of crimes committed by the 270 worst of the worst criminals ICE arrested. She doesn't talk about the communities terrorized by illegal immigrant gang members. She focuses on heartbreaking consequences for the people being deported. Even with that sympathetic framing, she still ruled against Walz because federal immigration enforcement is constitutionally protecting and states don't get to nullify federal law just because they don't like it. Walz knew this. His attorney general, Keith Ellison, knew this. They filed the lawsuit anyways as political theater, and it backfired spectacularly. Now, let me show you what happens when Walz's rhetoric creates real-world consequences. He was filing lawsuits and giving speeches about protecting immigrants. A Minnesota activist named Kyle Wagner was posting on social media calling for the murder of federal law enforcement officers.
This is when masked federal agents with long guns make their way up to the third floor of this Minneapolis complex.
Police for the warrant. Kyle Wagner, come to the door.
Minutes later, they take him away in handcuffs.
And what was he wearing when he got arrested? A sweater that says, "I am Antifa," short for anti-fascist, because nothing says fighting fascism like calling for the murder of law enforcement officers, right?
37-year-old Kyle Wagner, a Minnesota activist, is now charged with threatening to assault and kill ICE agents.
Listen to what this guy posted. No, not talking about peaceful protests anymore. We're not talking about having polite conversations anymore.
He called for the murder of federal law enforcement officers. He encouraged bloodshed in the streets of Minnesota. He is a domestic terrorist and he will be held accountable.
But here's what the media won't tell you about this guy. This guy didn't come up with his rhetoric in a vacuum. He's been radicalized by the same politicians who spent years, weeks, months telling Minnesota residents that ICE agents are the enemy. Walz created an environment where activists believe violence against federal agents was justified resistance. And when somebody actually acted on the rhetoric, Walz stayed silent. Neighbors complained the federal response was too aggressive. One said, "You think you live in the land of the free, and it turns out you live in a land where masked gunmen," get this, "break into your building." But Mr. Kyle Wagner was charged in Michigan because that's where he was doxing a pro-ICE individual, meaning he published somebody's personal information to encourage attacks against them. This is what happens when governors prioritize illegal immigrants over law enforcement. Kyle, this guy, this Antifa guy, thought he was a hero. He thought he was part of some type of resistance. And now he's facing federal charges for threatening to kill ICE agents. Good. We need to see more of this. Now, here's where the story gets absolutely delicious. After Walz created this disaster, after 2 citizens got killed, after an activist threatened to murder ICE agents, after a federal judge destroyed his lawsuits, after counties started cooperating with ICE, get this, his own liberal base turned on him.
Rapunzel, Rapunzel, throw down your support for your voting base. Come on.
You have a lot of lights on. Dinner's got to be done by now. We haven't heard from you in a very long time.
Listen to that. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, throw down your support for your voting base. Come own. They're mocking him. The libs are mocking him. His own supporters are standing outside his mansion, calling him a fairy tale princess hiding in a tower. They're demanding he come out and face them. They're accusing him of abandoning the people who elected him. That escalated quickly. And you know what? They're right. Walz created this mess with his sanctuary city policies. He told Minnesota counties not to cooperate with ICE. He filed a lawsuit and he knew that it was going to fail. He gave speeches about protecting immigrants while American citizens were getting hurt and killed. And then when consequences arrives, he hides in his mansion.
Is this the best result that Governor Tim Walz and other elected officials could come up with after meetings behind closed doors with Tom Homan? Shame!
Shame! The protesters are furious that Walz had a closed-door meeting with Tom Homan. They see it as betrayal. They thought Timmy Tampon Walz would fight to the end to protect illegal immigrants. Instead, he negotiated a surrender that allowed Homan to declare victory and pull out 700 agents while keeping 2,000 in place. This is the problem with woke politics. You can't govern based on virtue signaling. Eventually, reality arrives. And when it does, you either adopt or you get destroyed. Walz tried to adopt by quietly cooperating with Homan, and his base crucified him for it. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. That's the way these liberals work. Now, let me show you a case that's driving liberals absolutely insane because it perfectly illustrates why Walz's sanctuary city policies were always doomed to fail. ICE agents detained a 5-year-old child named Liam Ramos, and the story that the media is telling you is obviously completely fiction.
Tonight, a 5-year-old child detained by ICE in Columbia Heights is back home.
Liam Ramos landed at MSP Airport with his father earlier today. This after a judge ordered their release from a Texas detention center. A school official says Liam was taken from his driveway after agents used the little boy as bait to lure the rest of his family out of the home. But
the media says ICE used the little boy as bait to lure the rest of his family home. That's the narrative here. Evil ICE agents target innocent children. But here's what actually happened. ICE showed up to arrest the father. The father ran like a coward and abandoned his 5-year-old son in the driveway.
DHS says Ramos's father abandoned him by running away from agents. According to Ramos's school, he is one of several students who have been detained recently.
The media frames this as ICE's fault. The school official says Liam is one of several students who have been detained recently, as if ICE is randomly snatching up kids off the playgrounds. No, ICE is arresting the parents who are in the country illegally. And if those parents run away and abandon their children rather than facing deportation, what are they supposed to do? They got to protect the kid.
Attorneys representing the Ramos family say they are in the country legally from Ecuador as they pursue asylum claims, adding they have shown up for all of their court hearings and were held on civil immigration violations.
Now the attorneys are claiming the family is in this country legally from Ecuador as they pursue asylum claims. This is my question. If you're here legally, why did the father run from ICE? Why did he abandon his son like a coward? Why were they detained on civil immigration violation? Because pursuing asylum claims doesn't mean you're here legally. I just want to get that straight. It means you crossed the border illegally, claimed asylum, and you're waiting for a court date that might be years away. During that time, you're living in a sanctuary city like Minneapolis, where governors like Tim Walz told you ICE can't touch you. That was all fine and dandy until Greg Bovino showed up with 3,000 agents and proved that was a lie. America, Minnesota just became a cautionary tale for every sanctuary city in America. Tim Walz spent years building policies that protected illegal immigrants over American citizens. He told counties not to cooperate with ICE. He positioned himself as the resistance to Trump's deportation agenda. All that collapsed in 3 weeks. The Trump administration flooded Minnesota with 3,000 agents. They arrested over 4,000 people, including 270 violent criminals. 2 U.S. citizens got killed during the operation. An activist threatened to murder ICE agents and got arrested. A federal judge destroyed Walz's lawsuit. Counties started honoring immigration detainers, and Walz's own liberal base turned on him, protesting outside his mansion and demanding he face them. Now, Tom Homan is pulling out 700 agents, not because they lost, but because Minnesota surrendered. Counties are cooperating. Local law enforcement is turning over arrested illegals. The mission is succeeding. This is what happens when you govern off of virtue signaling instead of reality. When you protect illegal immigrants forever, eventually federal law wins. And when it does, you either adapt or you get destroyed. Walz tried to adapt, and his own base abandoned him. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.